And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside SPD off. Bring in SPD off. It's orange!
R45! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You good? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Welcome in, everyone, to another NSF broadcast. Today we're looking at Starlink 12-9, and on your screen right now is Space Launch Complex 40 from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station and a Falcon 9 with some satellites in there at the top. My name is Gene Rowley with NSF, and joining us today is an all-star team, in my opinion. I would say that. The one and only Alex. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. We have another launch, of course, and I have to be here because it's Falcon 9, right?
You have to be here. It's like a rule. When I do Falcon 9 launches, you have to be here. We've also got some great camera folks out in the field. The shot you're seeing right now is from the one and only DYSD. How are you today? There's a shot of you.
I am doing really well. It is a sunny and warm day out here. We're so used to these night launches, but what a great time for a launch in the mid-afternoon.
Is that why you have your patented umbrella over your head? We can see you on the behind-the-scenes shot.
Yes, I have a hoodie sort of draped over my head for the sun in addition to a hat, and once we get closer to launch, I will be using that to cover the monitor for tracking.
Yeah, we see your tracking mount there. Also in the field today, out at Cars Park, is Max Evans. Max, how are you?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm doing great, Gene. Weather is beautiful out today, I have to say, and it is a very nice change of pace to have a daytime Starlink and critically no fog, unlike the last two missions we've had. So clear views of Space Launch Complex 40 are a welcome sight.
And they did push this launch into the window by 1 hour. So we've got a couple hours. We've got about an hour. You see T minus 57 minutes up there in the upper left-hand corner for this launch. And all indications are that things are going to be going as planned. On the pad right now is booster 1078 on its 17th flight. And Alex, you were talking about the turnaround time in the back channel. Producing today, we're going to get back to that in a minute, but producing today is Carson Phillips pressing all the buttons and making sure that we're able to do and bring you these camera views. But we were talking about the turnaround today, Alex, on this booster. It hasn't really been that long since this booster flew on its 16th mission.
Yeah, this was used last time on the Starlink Group 12-6 mission, 39 days ago, essentially. You can see there that turnaround time, at least for the T0 that we're counting down for, which is that 2:18 and 30 seconds p.m. Eastern time. And so if that were to launch, that is 39 days. It's actually on the higher end of the turnarounds these days. If you asked me 2 years ago, I will tell you, ooh, that's actually quite a quick turnaround. But nowadays, 39 days, it's actually on the higher end. Nowadays, boosters are being turned around in like 25, 30 days. So 39 being that close to 40, yeah, it's quite a long turnaround, if you will, for nowadays, for how quick they can turn them around.
And they're always trying to shave time off those turnarounds because of this. The cadence has just been crazy. And you can see on your screen, this thing has several Starlink missions under its belt. And today is its 17th potential launch and recovery. The recovery vehicle out in the Atlantic is a shortfall of gravitas, and the fairings will be picked up, should this thing launch, by Doug also out there in the water. This one is going over the Bahamas, where I was last week on vacation. And so in case anybody in chat was wondering, I actually did go look for pieces of S-33. I know it sounds stupid, but it was a lot of fun to go on vacation and go hunting for pieces of a starship. I didn't find anything, and that's okay. But we had a good time out there. So this one's going out over the Bahamas, and the payload for this is Alex. I'm going to turn it over to you for payload on today's Falcon 9 launch.
Yeah, so it's 21 Starlink satellites, 8 of them V2 minis, and 13 of them direct to cell. One important thing, though, this is the old traditional Bahamas kind of southern launch. So it is not going like we saw yesterday, for example, those news from SpaceX about landing in the middle of the archipelago, right? Like right in the middle of those islands. They have some waters there that are from the Bahamas. And so in order to land there, they need to ask the Bahamas, hey, can we land here with our drone ship, putting here our drone ship, and then putting our boosters through your airspace and everything, right? It's not as easy as, oh yeah, let's do it. You kind of have to ask another country for that kind of stuff. And so they did that, and now they have approval, but it's not going to be this mission. It's a few missions later down the line. It's actually 3 more missions out here from the Cape down the line.
And then NSF will be there to cover all the launches for you that we possibly can. By the way, if you want to follow more of NSF, be sure to check out all of our socials on X and Facebook, and of course here on YouTube. All of they'll put them up on the screen. We have too many to list. But also you can follow a lot of the great articles over at nasaspaceflight.com. And I've been reading several of those. There they are: Facebook, Instagram, X. Follow all of our socials, and we appreciate it. And send us questions in chat. Of course, the chat is open, and I see a lot of familiar names in there zipping by at light speed. You can send us your questions at NASA Spaceflight, and then they'll pop up, and we will get to those shortly. I also would be remiss if I didn't remind you guys that there's a lot of great stuff out on the store, shop.nasaspaceflight.com. I know we're into February already, but the 2025 calendars I think are still available. If not, someone in the channel will tell me that they're not, but I think they are. The Flight 7 patches and the new Glenn shirts and so on. And I love my new Glenn shirt that I got just a couple weeks ago before I went on vacation. So go and check out all that good stuff. And I think a link is going to be popping up. Thanks, Nightbot. You're the man. You're welcome, Gene. Let's get to a question. Is this flight having direct-to-cell satellites? Alex, I'm going to ask you that question. Do we know that? And I keep seeing something that comes across on my phone that says that the direct-to-cell is now spreading out. Wasn't it just one carrier, and now it's kind of moving to several others?
What do you mean?
Well, I saw something. I thought it was T-Mobile at the beginning, and I saw something on AT&T or what. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it popped up on my phone the other day, and I don't know.
Well, with AT&T, it's another company. It's called AST Space Mobile. They have a partnership with the AT&T, and they also have direct-to-cell connectivity. It's a different kind with a different constellation, different satellites as well, different altitudes and everything. But they also have a service coming up. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, it's only with T-Mobile, but SpaceX is partnering with other U.S. carriers and also carriers from New Zealand and Australia, if I'm not mistaken, and even maybe Japan. So yeah.
I put you on the spot for that one. If anybody would know, it's you. Because it just popped up on my phone. I was like, what's this? I thought it was cool because it was space nerdy stuff. And, I'm a space nerd. And so is Mike Alpha Tango Sierra, or as we call him around here, Mats. Thank you for upgrading to launch director. And I kind of want to talk to one of you guys. Like, I know I've got D, I've got Max, and I've got Alex. The one thing that I want to ask about, like, he just went to a launch director. Don't you get like special stuff when you upgrade to your subscriptions? Alex, do you know what you get, like back channel stuff and members only? I don't know that stuff. That's why I'm asking.
In terms of what you get, well, one of the things that you can get if you are Capcom or above, you can get Discord access and see me suffer through while I write Starbase Update, which is what I did today. It was a very lengthy I don't know. It's one of these Discord stages that we use, and we've now enabled that so that we can share our work with the members. And also in return, we kind of get a little bit of help, which is fine and really nice as well. I got a lot of help from our members on like the traveling blog and everything on the chopsticks at Starbase, because I was writing Starbase update and trying to piece together the path of the cable and everything. It was a whole deal. Um, but yeah, that's
So,
the sort of stuff that you can get if you are Capcom or above, which Launch Reactor covers, of course. And we're thinking of new things as well to add to the list.
so wait a minute. They get to watch you while you're doing like behind the scenes stuff, like Starbase Update, and like while you're
Yeah,
doing it. Oh, that's cool.
yeah. I will show my screen, right, and the
Mhm.
script, and then we just talk about this is how I structure the script. This is what I
Huh.
want to talk here and there and whatnot. It's fun. They see me suffer because it's a very suffering
That's cool.
process.
I didn't know that. That's pretty awesome. I didn't know that. So there you go. If you want to watch Alex work, I guess in a weird way, you can have fun with that. Let's talk about the fairings on this one. And again, Alex, I got to come to you because this is one of those Falcon 9 ones. Max said that I could send him questions, but Max, I don't know what questions to send you other than like weather questions or camera questions. But it's a beautiful day out there, so he's talking to me right now in a weird voice, probably. How do we know how often the fairings on this flight have been flown? Alex, do we know that?
Unfortunately, for this launch, we do not know because we have not seen, or if the only way to know this is when we see the numbers. And there's Starlink missions, especially Starlink, where we see those numbers because they roll in front of our cameras, because they are stacked at Hangar X2 at Roberts Road, and then they roll by our cameras. And so we see those numbers. We are able to identify when they flew previously and perhaps guess how many flights they have under their belts. But unfortunately for this one, that is not the case. And so we do not know how many flights, but they do seem used. So they, of course, seem to be flight proven. And they're going to be recovered by Doug out there in the ocean. So yeah. They're going to be recovered.
Hazelnut, thank you for that. Max, you're out at Cars Park. I'm going to switch to Max. Max is out at Cars Park. Can I ask you why you decided to set up out there today?
Yeah, sure. So I'm out at Cars Park today because Falcon 9 is heading southeast on a 43-degree orbital inclination today. So Cars Park is situated south of Slick 40, and the whole purpose of being here was to have a more downward and side view of Falcon 9 as it ascends, to show more, I guess, of a side profile of Falcon 9 and the exhaust plume expansion as it climbs higher and higher into the atmosphere and onto orbit. So that is where I am set up today, and we are blessed with some really great weather. So it looks like, assuming things stay the way they are, we are going to have clear views all the way up until stage SEP.
Looking forward to that. And of course, D is at the press site sitting at a folding table with the tracking camera. And we were talking earlier, D, about like the difference between Max's shot over the water and then your shot from where you are over land, and some of the heat that's messing up the shot. But you've got the big tracking rig, don't you, D?
Yeah, so that heat distortion we were talking about, yeah, as the sun is out and heating up the ground, it causes a lot of disturbance in the air, which you can see here, whereas the water seems to be a bit cooler than the ground, or at least it's mixing up, so it's not having quite as much disturbance. And Max is, compared to the shot you're looking at almost double the focal length. Um, and so it's a lot less heat distortion from there today, but once it gets up into the atmosphere and we are not looking right along the ground, that heat distortion should clear up quite a bit. And yeah, I'm using the tracker today. And in addition to my usual tracking camera, there is a wide camera on there and a telescope on there. So hopefully we should have some excellent shots for you this launch.
The telescope looks pretty cool. We're looking at we're looking at it now. Was that 8 or 10 inch? Is that an 8-inch telescope?
Yep, it's an
Very
8-inch telescope. So it'll be about 4,000 millimeter equivalent.
Nice. So Walbrook Wanderers FC wants to know, when does the window end? And I can answer that one because I have it right in front of me. This window has been broken up into several sub windows, and the very last one ends at 5:07:59 p.m. Eastern. For those of you that care, that's 22:07:59 UTC, and 4:07, call it 4:08 my time here in Central Time Zone. So 5:07. Walbrook, there's the answer to that one. And then Alex, I'm going to come back to you. Deborah Hall wants to know, where do they store the boosters when they're not in use? Because they got a lot of boosters. Where do they put them?
They have two locations for that. So they have Hangar AO, I think it is the location. That's at the Cape side of things. That is at an industrial site. And they also have another place, which is the main location, that is Hangar X at Roberts Road. So we know this mostly because of how these boosters come through and everything. And they seem to be stored at both sites. So they have storage for about maybe 15, a bit under 15 boosters at Hangar X, and then another handful at Hangar AO for more boosters that may be needed.
And again, if you're just joining us, you're looking at Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. That is booster 1078, potentially on its 17th launch today. And it has a storied history of Starlink launches. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's too many to count here. A short fall of gravitas is where that booster should be landing this afternoon, and those fairings will be picked up by Doug. This is going out over the Bahamas. And the Starlinks in there weigh about 14 tons. And for those of you that want to know, is this a stubby nozzle on the upper stage? The answer is no, it is not a stubby nozzle. I don't know, Alex, what's the deal with the stubby nozzle? What? I know people either are team stubby or not team stubby. I just don't understand why. And people in chat are going to light me up for like, Steam Tubby all the way, or, whatever. Of course, they're trying to save money on that. But this one, they're not. This one's going to... Where was the orbit on this one? This was low Earth orbit insertion, right?
Yep, this is a 284 by 294 kilometer orbit, 43 degrees, but it's carrying a really heavy payload, about 14, 15 tons of payload. And so they need all of the performance. The stubby nozzle is used on missions where they can spare the performance, like they have enough performance on their on the rocket to be able to do whatever they want. And so that stubby nozzle, it's twofold, right? On the one hand, they don't need to use as much material on it because they can save on the niobium, but also, and therefore it's cheaper, but also at the same time, because it's shorter, it takes less time to create. So it's a process that takes quite a while, and it's in steps. You need a controlled environment to be able to make that circumference, that cone shape and everything. And so we had, in fact, Tom Mueller on an interview here on SF explaining sort of, more or less the process, obviously not in complete detail, but he explained that it is a multi-day process, multi-step process, that it takes a long time. And so if you can cut down that to just maybe one step, one part of the process, you can also create more of these nozzles a lot quicker. So you have more material, which is cheaper. The other way around, more material that you save, aka it's cheaper. You don't use as much of it, right? And you can also have it ready much quicker. So you can process and create more of these a lot quicker. But again, it's only used on those missions where, there's enough performance for it. So it's not widely used. It's not like they use it every single mission, but it's something that whenever they can, they use it because of those advantages.
And some other advantages that we have are the people supporting us today. Like that was a professional segue, right, Alex? You're welcome, chat. That was for you. We want to thank some folks today for making all of this possible. Booster 12, thank you so much for that super chat. And yes, this is time for Falcon 9, another super chat. Appreciate you. RC Horseman gifting 5 Red Team memberships. If you are the recipient of those, be sure to thank some folks. Thank RC Horseman, name we know in chat. Appreciate you gifting those out. Nils G. Key Cromer, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership as well. And, there are a lot of people that join NSF because of these gifted memberships. And there are other folks that join in because they want to support us on their own. So Virginia Montoro, thank you for becoming a PadRat member. It's because of you that we can do this and have fun with it. And also Clara Reeves, thank you for becoming a Capcom member. I know, Clara, you're going to watch Alex in the background do his Starbase update work, since we just talked about it. Thank you for becoming a Capcom member. And I want to say Bojack. I'm going to say Bojack. Bojack. I don't know how to say that name, but thank you very much for the question. Where do you keep the extra Starlinks? We talked about boosters. They obviously have a big warehouse of Starlinks, right, Alex?
Well, they store that at Hangar X2. That's where they integrate those Starlink satellites.
Mm-hmm. So we just broke 40 minutes, T-minus 40 minutes, and we're going to talk about the timeline because we've got a lot of things that are happening right now. Alex, talk us through the timeline just under T-minus 40 minutes.
Yeah, so right now they should be getting ready to wrap up that go-no-go poll for propellant load. And at T-minus 35 minutes, that propellant load, if it's go, of course, then they'll go into propellant load. And that should be at T-minus 35 minutes, loading RP1 on both stages and liquid oxygen on the first stage. Now, as usual, we don't have any access to the countdown loops or anything like it. So we'll have to wait either for SpaceX confirmation on X, or we'll have to see whenever there's frost on the vehicle, then we'll know that they're loading that liquid oxygen. Usually when that happens, it's about T-minus 32, T-minus 31 minutes in the count. So in about 7 minutes or so, we'll be having an idea of whether this is going at that T0 or we have to wait a bit later into the window.
And then we're going to start seeing vents here as well. They'll start venting things as they're cooling things down, right?
Yep, at T-minus 20 minutes, we'll have that T-minus 20-minute vent, the chill down vent, ahead of the liquid oxygen load on the second stage.
So let's see. It's somebody's birthday today. Where did that one go? Electro More. It's your birthday. And by the way, they have a question for you. How do they identify the boosters? Because I said, hey, this is booster 1078 on its 17th launch today. How do they identify that? And by the way, happy birthday, Alex.
Because SpaceX publishes on their website the history of the booster. So they say which previously launched Crew 6, O3B Empower, Bluebird 1, 5, USSF 124, and 12 Starlink missions. So by doing that, we already know which booster it is, because when they first launch and through their history, we can see their numbers. They have numbers on the boosters. And so it's very tiny. So it's really rare for us to be able to see it. Like when it's on transport, it's covered. At McGregor, it's very far away from our cameras. So it needs to be either on the first launch or near the first launch, like when it comes, for example, on a drone ship or something like that. That's when we spot it. And then by tracking, backtracking their history of missions, then we can say, okay, it is this booster, it is this other booster. And so that way we can know which boosters are what. The same deal with the fairings, right? The only thing is that the fairings are a lot more complicated because SpaceX never says they're flying for X amount of time and they flew this mission and this other mission. We'll have to, like for the fairings, there's a few people that I know that what they work on is like suit marks. There's different features on different fairings because of their missions that they flew. Like some of them have extra access panels that they can unbolt if they want to access the payload. But those kind of things.
And speaking of boosters and Starlinks, this is the 230th launch dedicated to Starlink, and the 65th successful landing since the last one had an issue and a shortfall of gravitas. There you go. There's that graphic. You guys, Carson, you're right on it, man. You guys are right on it. The 65th successful landing since the last one had an issue. I'm reading from the bottom to the top. 97th landing on a shortfall of gravitas out of 98 attempts. Not too shabby. SpaceX's 18th launch of the year and the 4th launch for the month and we are on the 8th day of February. 81st Falcon launch since the last failure, and Falcon 9's 403rd orbital flight. Can you imagine 231 launches from Slick 40 already, Alex? That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Are we just going to keep these graphics are going to get too big for us to read because the numbers are just going to be like way too high. Can you imagine in a couple of years from now, we're doing another mission and it's a Starlink mission once they've retired this, we're doing it on Starship. And it's like, there's now 87,000 Starlinks in orbit and 10,000 of them burned up last night. The numbers are just getting crazy with the cadences that SpaceX is going. Let's see. Can some boosters be stored at the assembly building at either LC-39A or Slick 40? That's a question from Amiga Clone. Alex, do you think they keep them there at the assembly buildings? I mean, they got to have some of them in there, right?
At Slick 40, they cannot store boosters because, by the sense of like storing, because it can only fit one rocket, and so. Right now, for example, the rocket, it's the rocket, this one that we're seeing, it's outside, so the hangar is empty. Then you could say, yeah, they could store a booster, but it needs to be the booster that it's going to be launching next. Because once this rocket launches, the TE stays there on the pad, it is refurbished, and then the rocket is lifted inside of the hangar and put inside of the TE, because the TE rolls down to the hangar, and it's a whole process where they lift the rocket, it's hanging up in the air, then the TE comes, rolling down from the pad and comes into the hangar, rolls down the rocket, and the rocket is inserted onto the transport erector. So it can only fit one rocket. So at Slick 40, it cannot be. At LC-39A, they do have space for multiple boosters to be stored there too. Yeah.
So somebody in chat asked if they could see from Dee's angle, and this actually is Dee's camera right now. And Dee, I'm going to come to you for a question. You've done a ton of these Starlink missions and Falcon 9 missions. Do you always set up at the same time, same place, or you move it around a little bit? That's not really my question. But the second part of that is there's always the people that want to know what the 4 towers are.
Yeah, so it does vary a little bit, especially with this rig. It is very large and heavy, so bringing it out to what I would call our more usual location, which is a couple hundred feet in front of me, is not quite as practical as it is with typical tripods. But for the most part, for a Slick 40 mission, we'll be out here on the lawn of the press site within a couple hundred feet. For 39A, it's far more likely that we are up behind us, closer to the hut, and that gives us a slightly more elevated perspective. But if we're there for 40, trees would block our view. And so there's a little bit of variation, and of course, for missions like New Glenn, Max, Julie, and I were all off-site at different locations today. Max is out at Cars, and so there are a bunch of different opportunities you can go for on different missions from totally public locations rather than just here at the press site. And of course, that's Max's view, and you can see those 4 towers. So those 4 towers are part of the lightning protection system at Slick 40. So they have wires running between them, and if lightning were to strike the rocket, obviously that would not be ideal. So those wires are grounded. So if any lightning is in the area, it is far, far more likely to hit those wires and be safely directed away from the rocket itself and important ground systems and all of that.
Max, we're looking at your shot. It looks like the wind's picking up a little bit. How far away are you from the launch site right now with the picture we have on screen?
Yeah, unfortunately, the wind is picking up a little bit out of the southeast, so I apologize for any bit of the camera shake. I'm at about 2,000 mil equivalent, so it's a pretty tight shot. But in terms of distance, Cars Park is around, I think it's about 8.5 miles from Slick 40, which it's really one of the things that is so funny about Florida, especially here on the coast or near any body of water, especially given these weather conditions. Because we have such a clear view of Slick 40, it doesn't seem like it's 8 or 9 miles away. But that's what you get when you were over just very flat terrain and there isn't a lot of atmospheric distortion to distort your view. So Cars Park being about 8 miles away, it's not obviously as close as you can get. D is a bit closer to me, about 4.5 miles from the press site. Slick 40 is. But the benefit, as we said earlier, from this perspective is because Falcon 9 is flying southeast today, we will get a much more side profile of Falcon 9 and the exhaust plume as it ascends into the upper atmosphere. So that is why I'm at a different location today. But that being said, Cars is accessible for most launches for the public. I think they ask about a $5 cover fee or cover charge to get in.
Mm-hmm.
But it is an otherwise great location, especially out on the pier closer to the gate.
And we just passed T-minus 30 minutes. Max, I'm going to stay with you. What are they doing over there at this time? We know we're about 10 minutes away from the vent, but if we can bring the timeline up again, what are they doing right now to the second stage of that rocket at T-minus 28 minutes?
So I'll start where we're at now. So assuming weather, they pulled go for weather and there was nothing wrong with any of the ground service equipment or the vehicle itself, they should be into propellant loading at this point, being at 28 minutes in the count. Prop load for both first stage LOX and RP1 and second stage RP1 should have been underway at T-minus 35 minutes, and hopefully we will have more signs of that process starting here in the next few minutes. But the big marker is of course the T-minus 20-minute vent. And so that is essentially when SpaceX is beginning to purge and cleanse the propellant lines in the transporter erector or strongback, whatever you want to call it, in preparation for stage 2 liquid oxygen loading. The last thing you want to do is flow any cryogenic fluid through any plumbing that's, say, at room temperature or any like summertime Florida temperatures, which can range from anywhere from 70 to 90 plus degrees Fahrenheit. And even at like, say, freezing temperatures like 30 degrees Fahrenheit or zero C, because of the temperatures that LOX is at, I think it's at about minus 200 and something Celsius. I'll have to recheck that. Even at like even 0 degrees Fahrenheit, that all that plumbing is still very hot in comparison to the temperature of liquid oxygen, and then that is why they had to thermally condition and cleanse those lines. So that will be the biggest sign that we are on track, assuming that we don't see frost, which I'm trying my best to look for right now. But the distance and the transporter erector here are making it tricky. But hopefully we will have that cue in just over 7 minutes time.
Yeah. There's a little bit of venting there on the left-hand side, but then from D's camera angle, I'm not going to say you can see, but
there is definitely
there's
definitely frost there. There's definitely frost there. I saw a bit of clouds coming from the bottom of the LOX tank, so we are well into prop load at this time, folks.
You have the advantage of having only water, open water. D unfortunately has a lot of the vegetation, I guess, in the way.
Yeah. Nancy Allen wants to know, is this booster coming back to the Canaveral pad? No, Nancy, this is not an RTLS or return to launch site mission. This one's going to be potentially landing on a shortfall of gravitas, as we say, bobbing in the Atlantic, waiting for it to come back down. Lever Action Larry, thank you so much for that super chat. Appreciate the coverage, and we appreciate you tuning in to these launches, even at Starlink. We say, oh, it's just a Starlink launch. Yeah, but it's a Starlink launch on a Falcon 9, and we're rocket people, so we love rockets just as much as you do. Thank you for that support. Christopher Clarks, thank you for that $10 super chat. Any chance this will be viewable in the northern part of the Bahamas? We do have a launch graphic. I don't know if it's going to be viewable, and it depends on what your definition of viewable means. Potentially, I don't know what do you guys think? Alex, I'll go to you first. What do you think from a northern Bahamas, from a downrange perspective?
I think there's a good chance you might see it. but it also will depend on the weather, right? I don't know how the weather is down there, but we've had Lon down there in the Bahamas in the past, right? And he was able to see stage 1, stage 2, the entry burn of the stage 1 as well. So if you are in the area, just try to look for it, and you'll be able to spot it probably. Yeah, but
And then
yeah,
the
if you don't-
next
if you don't
next
look, and
yeah, look up and see if you can see it. Send us a picture. Uh, we'd love to see your viewing angle. And then Max or D, I guess I'm going to ask D first. We're way too early for any jellyfish action in the upper atmosphere, right? We got to wait until it's later in the evening.
Absolutely. So the key for these for jellyfishes, as we refer to them, space jellies, or a lot of nicknames, but the key for those is that the sun is just below the horizon, so the ground isn't lit up and the atmosphere isn't nearly as lit up. But once the rocket gets higher in the sky, its exhaust gets illuminated by the sun, or in some cases, we have what we call moon jellies when the moon is particularly bright and you up your exposure quite a bit where you can really see the second stage exhaust later into flight. But the key for that is that the sun has to be set or it has to be before sunrise. So it's definitely not a jellyfish time of day, but that means that we have a daytime launch. And I feel like those are pretty rare at this point. So it's great to see what I anticipate will be a gorgeous, gorgeous launch.
Absolutely. I totally agree. We're under T minus 24 minutes, and we have propellant loading on the second stage of booster 1078 over there at Slick 40, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. David K has a question for you, D, but I don't know if you want to answer it here or on Twitter. It has to do with the camera mods you add to your scope and the mount to add the camera and the telescope, etc. I'm just going to say thanks and good luck. Dave K, thank you for that super chat. D, do you want to give us a 30-second answer to that? What mods you have on that giant piece of equipment in front of you?
Yeah, so there's actually not all too much. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here. I'll send me a message or at me on Twitter, and I will gladly reply and talk more into it. But there is a T adapter for the telescope, so basically something that makes it so rather than having eyepieces in place, I can have a camera body, in this case, an EF mount camera attached to it. And I also have a follow focus with a little bit of jerry rigging to make it work so that I can adjust focus during flight because, especially at these extreme focal lengths, you can't just set your focus and forget it. Well, if you're a bit wider, sometimes you can have your focus set for launch and leave it there throughout. But when you're really zoomed in, you have to adjust focus during launch.
And that's for that giant tracking rig, everybody, that you can see in front of D right there. Hopefully tracking that Falcon 9 rocket as it lifts off here in just over 22 minutes. Alex, I'm going to come back to you as we near the 20-minute vent. Tell us what that actually means when we see it. Probably from Max's will be the one of the best shots. There's D shot there. You can see the venting on the outside of the second stage booster. But that 20-minute vent, we all look at it and say that's the really important one. Why is that one the important one, and what is it doing?
well, it's important mostly because it's one of the biggest ones that we see until we are very close to liftoff, and it transitions essentially from not loading liquid oxygen on the second stage to then being able to do that. You gotta need you gotta need to cool down those lines, the line that goes to the second stage to load liquid oxygen. So it's a very important process, and it always happens at the same time of the countdown. So it's also important because we can know even down to the second when the T0 is gonna be, thanks to that vent. And so whenever it happens, it's always around T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds in the count. And so that is also very good for us to make sure that we are really on track for that T0 at 2:18 and 30 seconds PM Eastern. If it happens a little bit later, then it means it's a little bit later, that T0. If it doesn't happen, then you know that something has happened between the start of propellant load and that T minus 20 minute vent. Because then it will be like, oops, right? If it doesn't happen, it's an indicative of something else going on. So in 10 seconds or so, that T-minus 20-minute event should be appearing there from the stromback, indicating that they are preparing for that chill down of the liquid oxygen line.
What you're seeing down at the bottom is the smoke,
There it
the
is.
steam coming up, and there's the 20-minute vent. And here comes the timeline. For those of you just joining us, again, you are looking at booster 1078 is on ready to go. There's the great shot of the vent and the timeline on the left-hand side of your screen. This is the 17th launch for booster 1078. It is carrying a batch of 8 Starlink V2 mini satellites in the fairing up there at the top, and 13 Starlink Direct to Cell satellites from Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This is going to be launching out over the Atlantic, passing northeast of the Bahamas. Inside the fairing, it's carrying approximately 14 tons of satellites, those V2 minis and the Direct to Cell satellites. As you can see on the screen, the 20-minute vent there is pretty prominent, and that tells us that, again, chilling of the upper stage or loading of the upper stage, Alex?
This is chilling the umbilical line that goes to the second stage, but it is not loading anything right now. It'll load in about 3 minutes from now, T-minus 16 minutes, and we'll see that because that T-minus 20-minute vent will disappear. So that vent, when they start that loading, it'll disappear. And that'll be our cue that they're loading liquid oxygen on the second stage.
And you can kind of get an indication of where our cameras are today. This is a shot from D. Wise, who's at the press site. They're at Cape Canaveral, and then the vent is almost coming directly toward that position. And then, of course, the other shot, the vent was going almost just directly to the left-hand side of the screen, and that's Cars Park, where Max Evans is set up. And it's really nice to have both the cameras out there with these professional operators. And you can find a lot of their shots on their metal prints at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. So if you want to support them as photographers and the work that they do out in the field, check out their metal prints from not only Falcon 9 launches, but also all of the other launch providers, and some of their amazing Starship photographs on the metal prints. Like, I've got one that I still need you to sign, D. You weren't there at Flight 7. I took your picture all the way to Texas and back, so it's still in my truck. Hopefully at Flight 8, we'll get you out there to sign it.
That sounds like a plan. I plan to be there unless, there's a new Glenn in the way, as happened this time.
Right, exactly. And there you can see some of those photographs in the metal prints. They are amazing. And again, it goes to support the photographers and the work they do. Jack and Mary and Dee, and of course, when you start listing people, you forget all the names of everybody that was out there and that goes out into the field for NSF to capture some of these amazing shots. We were talking about the Delta IV Heavy. Yeah, we missed that one. There it is. But you can still get it at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Something you can also do is join us and support NSF for more launch action. We're rocket nerds just like you. As Das always says, we're just a bunch of friends that like rockets, and we get the opportunity to do this. And by joining us, like Bob Kaplinger did as a PadRat member, you get to help us make this this kind of content. And we love each and every one of you guys for being here. Keep the questions coming in, by the way, at NASA Spaceflight in chat. And be sure to go out and check out all of our other socials, Instagram, Facebook. I'm a Facebook guy, so I kind of hang out on the NSF Facebook channel and read the posts, and then also over on the website, reading a lot of the articles. But keep those questions coming in at NASA Spaceflight. Let's get to some right now. Walbrook Wanderers FC says that they've watched every Falcon 9 launch in the last 9 months. That's a lot of launches. I don't know if you're keeping track like Alex does, but that's a significant number of launches. Joanne M., how is the confirmation of the new NASA administrator coming? Have we heard any updates? I haven't heard anything. I'm sure, it's going to go through the confirmation process like anything else. We're not going to talk politics here, but, we like the guy. I guess we could say that. He's been here. He's done interviews with NSF before, and we'll see what happens when that they either goes through or it doesn't. Vustenkopfen, did I say that right? I hope I said that right. Wants to know something about New Glenn, about the capsule. We can talk about that on a different stream. I don't know. I'm assuming there will be. I don't want to get into it right now at T minus 15 minutes from this Falcon 9 launch, but appreciate you asking that question and joining us today. And Alex, I'm going to definitely send this one to you. You keep spreadsheets of all these launches and times and fueling times, and is that correct? Like I heard that was a rumor.
Yeah,
You do.
there's a lot of different
Okay.
spreadsheets. Yeah.
So you might actually know this one. Kay Geisel wants to know, and I think this is a great question. At the current rate, when will Falcon 9 surpass Soyuz for number of launches? I think I already know the answer. I think it already has. Or
No.
it hasn't?
No,
Even at
no,
200 and something launches?
no, it has
No.
not. So
Wow. Okay.
Falcon 9, this will be the 433rd orbital flight of Falcon 9.
Right.
And if you count the whole family of Soyuz or Soyuz derivatives or like R7 derived rockets or whatever, that's at 2000, more than 2000 actually. And so
Wow.
2001, if you count the Soyuz 2.1V that launched this week. And so right now, at the pace, I don't think Falcon 9 will get to 2000. I do think it'll get to 1000, but 2000 is quite a stretch. However, if you count sort of like configurations of the Soyuz rocket, there's a Soyuz configuration, which was the Soyuz U rocket. I think that did about 700 and something launches. I cannot pinpoint right now the exact number. But I know it's sort of in the neighborhood of 700. So 700 and something. Falcon 9 could probably reach that at this rate in 2027 if they keep this rate through 2025 and 2026.
I had no idea. I thought I knew a lot about rocket launches. I did not know enough about Russian rocket launches. Apparently, that's a staggering feat. So we'll see when Falcon 9, and again, they're talking about phasing out the Falcon 9. So, if in the next, probably 5 years or so, I can see them switching to Starship when they get that fully operational. So like all you guys in chat, I'm learning stuff here too. Alex, I appreciate that. Deadly Driver 1 wants to know, do you ever think Falcon 9 will launch from Starbase? And I think I'll answer this. No. Just they'd have to build another a dedicated tower and et cetera, et cetera. Alex, I think that's an easy one, right?
Yeah, there's no room for there.
Yeah.
The original plan was to have a Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy launch pad, though, which is kind of bonkers that they had that planned at some point. But yeah, the original plan, yes, it had Falcon 9 there at Starbase, but no longer the case, of course. Now it's all Starship.
And that's not the case for Florida because we know they're planning on launching and recovering Starships from Florida right there along with Falcon 9. So that's going to be fun to watch in the future. Don't forget, guys, send us all those questions and we'll get them out to Max D and Alex at T-minus 12 minutes. You can do it at NASA Spaceflight in chat. And I'm kind of watching chat as it goes through. Let's see, Ricardo wants to know, can it be seen from the Caribbean? We talked about that a little bit. We don't know exactly where you are or what the weather's like in the Bahamas today. So potentially look up in the sky here in about 14 minutes and you potentially will see a Falcon 9 lifting off. And it is going to go just northeast of the Bahamas. So we'll see what happens. Right now, as they are fueling the second stage, we talked about the 20-minute vent. It's about halfway up the tower there. That looks like it stopped. So at T-minus 11 minutes, Alex, what's going on with the fueling of this vehicle?
Right now, they have ended RP1 load on the first stage, and they have liquid oxygen load on the first stage, on the second stage. And they have already wrapped up so they have wrapped up that RP1 load on the second stage, and they are into the liquid oxygen load, right? Because we saw that Lux chill down vent, and it stopped, and now we can see actually that condensation on the second stage. So that's good. Meanwhile, loading of RP1 and liquid oxygen on the first stage continues. There's still a little bit of that liquid oxygen tank to be frosty. You can see there's still some soot visible, right? And at T minus 7 minutes, we'll have engine chill on the first stage Merlin engines, very similar to the same thing that we explained before with the liquid oxygen chill down on the transporter reactor. It's going to be very cold. You need to cool it down. That's what it's for, because otherwise you're going to shatter things, you're going to destroy things. You don't really want that to happen to your engines if you're going to light them up in 10 minutes from now. Then the Stromback will retract, and we're going to have that liquid oxygen load wrapping up on the first stage and on the second stage. That happens at T-3 and T-2 minutes. Before that, though, if you're wondering about the RP1 load on the first stage, because I mentioned the second stage, but not the first. On the first stage, that's in between the Stromback retract and the engine chill starting in about essentially around T-6 minutes into the countdown.
And that's where we are on the timeline, just under T-minus 10 minutes. And I think I'm going to start a new tradition. And then I'm going to go around the panel with a question. But a new tradition is everybody in chat. We've got over 5,000 people watching this launch right now. I want to know where everybody's from. I want you to hit the thumbs up button, and then I want you to tell me where you're from in chat. So, hello, Scotland. I'm in Alabama. Let's go. All right, Hawaii, Germany, UK, Athens, Georgia. I'm not that far from you. Zurich, and away goes the chat. Don't forget, guys, hit the thumbs up, then tell me where you're from. Australia, Oregon, Ireland, England, UK, North Carolina. I love it. Here's a fun question for you. This is from the Deadly Driver one again, same in chat. I'm going to go to D first on this one. And by the way, Max and Alex, I'm coming to you. At NASA Spaceflight, what would you rather take a trip to the moon, Starship V3 or Block 3, I guess, or Falcon 9? Would you take a trip to the moon on a Starship or Falcon 9? D, I'm coming to you first.
Well, I think the Starship is the more realistic one of those possibilities, so I'll definitely say Starship.
Max?
So V3 does seem a version 3 does seem a bit early, perhaps.
Yeah. Let's get it to where it successfully lands or was recovered about 150 times, and then we'll talk about crew rating. Max, what do you think? Falcon 9 or Starship?
Well, assuming both vehicles are able to go to the moon and come back safely, only one of them will have the eventual capability of landing on the moon. So, but since both, if in this scenario with both vehicles being able to just go to the moon, say on a free return trajectory, or just make a few orbits and come home, Dragon would be quite cramped for a 6 to 9 day expedition or longer. Even though it is one of the larger and more spacious capsules to have flown astronauts, it's still a pretty confined space for a long period of time. So, Starship would be my answer on that one, and I can also probably say with confidence that Starship would also be the more exciting experience overall, launching on a super heavy booster and then coming in and landing the way it does.
We all know what Alex is going to say. Alex?
But I like to be on the ground. Yeah, that's my answer.
I got to be honest. To me, it doesn't matter. We know Falcon 9 can do it, or may be able to do it. Obviously, it'll get you into space, but I think Falcon 9 would be fun. I think Starship would be much more comfortable when the crew rating is there, and it's a reliable catch maneuver with humans on board, which is going to be interesting. I mean, who knows? But I think being able to, if they ever install that gigantic window in the front of Starship, that's going to be insane. I would pay real American dollars to see that from the inside out. So it's going to be a lot of fun. T-minus 6 minutes, 36 seconds. And as we come up on T-5 here in about a minute and a half, Alex, what's going on with the vehicle now? We know what happens at 1 minute. We'll talk about that, but coming up on 6 minutes and then 5 minutes, what's going on in that vehicle?
Yeah, so we'll have in just a few seconds from now, we shall have that wrap up of the RP1 load on the first stage. So as I was mentioning, at T-minus 7 minutes, we should have had that engine chill going on the first stage engines, and we're already at T-minus 6 minutes, so that RP1 load on the first stage should be complete. That means all kerosene is loaded on Falcon 9, but we have a few more things heading out into the next few minutes of the count, which is That stromback retracting, there's a pair of clamps at the top of the vehicle that are holding on to the second stage. Those need to release. And then the stromback will retract about 1.8 degrees away from the vehicle. And then we're going to have that wrapping up of the liquid oxygen load on the first stage, first at T-minus 3 minutes, and then at T-minus 2 minutes will be for the second stage. And that will set things up for the final few minutes with the gas closeouts. We'll see the T-minus, the stromback vent, which will be in that case T-minus 1.5 minute vent by then, right? And we'll have a T-minus 1 minute, that handing over of the control of the count from the ground computers to the onboard computers, getting those tanks up to flight pressure and everything, final few checks, automated health checks essentially on the rocket. Lots of things are going on in the last 5 minutes of the count.
Let's see, Max and D, thank you guys for your commentary. Get out there and get us some great tracking shots. Do it because we know you can.
It is indeed that time, everybody. So thank you very much, and we will see y'all on the other side.
See you on the other side.
And we're going to have some audio from D. So here in just a couple of minutes, Alex and I are going to shut up and we'll get some of that great rocket audio. T-minus 4.5 minutes with Booster 1078 on the stand at Slick 40. This is its 17th launch. It had a 39-day, 12-hour turnaround, which we talked about a little earlier. And again, that booster is going to be going up and then coming down, hopefully, fingers crossed, on a shortfall of gravitas. And then Doug will be out there to pick up those fairing halves. It's carrying 8 Starlink V2 mini satellites and 13 Starlink Direct to Cell satellites. And as we cross T-minus 4 minutes, I want to say, let's see, GamerDad737, thank you for that super chat. $10 wants to shout out to Gamer Code and his mom watching the launch at Banana Creek. Enjoy. Guys, thanks for joining us today. The upper stage and the lower stage, as you can see that condensation, you'll see the frost buildup on the outside of the rocket. And when you see that, it's a relatively hot day in Florida and humid. And as you can see by that heat distortion, this shot is coming from the press site from D's camera. And you can kind of see that rippling in the distance. And it's not anything wrong. It's not anything weird. It just happens when it's a warm day and we are at a pretty good distance and zoomed in on the rocket. So at T-minus 3 minutes, you were talking, Alex, about gas closeouts and things like that. We know when it goes into startup at 1 minute, but right now in the launch, the command center, the launch command center, what are they doing? They're making all their final checks and everything for that 1 minute time, right?
Yeah, making sure that everything looks good on the vehicle, that everything is still in the right position. One of the things that usually happens at
Stage 1, launch load complete.
Well, there we have one of these steps, which is stage 1 looks load complete. So the first stage is completely loaded right now with propellants. One of the other things as well is like on the onboard computers get aligned and everything. You need those navigation systems. It's sort of like on an airplane, right? That they need to align themselves and everything with all of the other navigation aids and everything. So those things usually get done towards the end of the count. The automated flight termination system also gets armed, not triggered, of course, but armed. And so those things are usually done in the last few minutes. But in
Stage
terms of the
2, launch load
callouts,
complete.
the next one is that, which is stage 2 looks load complete, which means second stage is complete with propellant. And so everything has been loaded. Everything that needs to be loaded on Falcon 9 has already been loaded. So nothing else needs to be done there. And we are 90 seconds away from that liftoff, hopefully coming up really soon here.
And the vent we see is them purging the lines because you don't want any propellant or anything in the lines of the strongback. So they're clearing all those out, right?
Yeah, that's the gas closeouts call out that we usually hear, where they clear out all of those lines, need to depressurize also some of those systems that were pressurized for the propellant load. You kind of need to save those for the liftoff process. But yeah, everything being saved essentially so that the liftoff is as harmless as possible.
And we're below 1 minute, which means Falcon 9 should be
9
in
is in
startup. And I didn't hear the call. I'm not listening to it. But as we get closer to the launch, the onboard computers, they're doing their final checks, right?
Yep. Now they're doing all of the automated health checks and everything.
The launch vector and countdown 1,
Getting
go for launch.
nice. Okay, so go for launch then. We are getting the things like the tanks getting ready and pressurized for flight. They only have until T-minus 10 seconds to be able to manually abort or anything. So right as we cross that gate, it's all automated from there on.
We should be seeing this thing lift off any second now.
There it is.
There she goes. And there goes Booster 1078 on its 17th launch, and we should get that audio here in just a second. Wow, that never gets old. Great tracking work by Dee and Max in the field. Look at that beautiful shot as the plume starts to expand, as 1078 makes its way uphill. Look at that. Great camera work. Now, Alex, as this works its way up to main engine cutoff, you're seeing the expansion of the plume as it works its way up into the upper atmosphere. And as the atmospheric pressure decreases, you see those Merlin engines expand their plume out. Talk us through main engine cutoff and stage step, which is coming up here in just a minute.
Yeah, so we're going to have that shutdown of all 9 Merlin engines. It's usually a staggered shutdown, but it happens really quick. So you got to watch out for those very carefully. Then 4 pushers will separate both stages a few seconds later. There we have MECO, main engine cutoff. It looks like we have that separation, and now MVAC ignition, that ignition of the second stage engine. You can
Main
see
engine
it very
cutoff.
bright and lit up.
Stage separation confirmed.
And now the SpaceX view here. And there you have it. And you see there's some delay between the 2 feeds. That's because it's 2 different vehicles sending 2 different signals, and it's routed differently and everything. Next up should be the separation of the fairing halves, which hopefully we might see as 2, little white dots separating from the second stage. Look at that. There it is. There are the fairing halves separating from the second stage.
Amazing tracking work, simply amazing. And this is the SpaceX view from inside. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see those fairings separate. There they go.
Confirmed.
And that exposes those Starlink satellites, the V2 minis, and then those direct-to-cells to the vacuum of space. And I just can't get over the tracking shots that Max and Dee are bringing. You can see the RCS, the reaction control thrusters, all 4 pieces right there. And one thing always amazes me about SpaceX is it's hard enough to launch one vehicle into space, but to bring the booster back, you go from 1 vehicle to 2 vehicles, and now you're flying 2 spacecraft at the same time. It always blows my mind when it was hard enough to fly 1 in the past.
Yeah, I mean those fairing halves as well. They're coming down now using RCS thrusters, floating through the atmosphere, battling that reentry force, right? And then they pop out a parachute, they splash down in the ocean. There's a boat out there that's gonna recover them, right? That's Doug for this mission. Meanwhile, first stage goes down to the barge. Second stage does its thing, right? It's a very complicated dance, and really interesting that this is being done multiple times a week.
Yeah, it's crazy. We talked about the nozzle on the second stage, and as you can see on the screen, it is a full-size nozzle. And the reason they're doing that is that the mass or the weight of the payload is a little bit more if it was less. And you heard the call out, nominal trajectory. If the payload mass was less, they could save money on the material that it makes that, and we call that a stubby nozzle. This is not one of those. And then you see the engine there, the power head wrapped in the mylar to protect it. But that thing is powering its way up to its low Earth orbit, where it will release its satellites later on down the road. We're paying attention to the left-hand side, where booster 1078 is making its way to its entry burn, which is coming up here in just a little bit. Alice, why does it do the entry burn? I mean, we've watched Starship, and it doesn't do an entry burn. Why does Falcon 9 do an entry burn when it's coming back in?
It comes back a lot faster than Super Heavy, while so if you compare the reentry speed of Super Heavy to the speed of the to the speed of the am I being heard?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so if you compare the speed of Super Heavy to the speed of Falcon 9 after the entry burn, they are very similar, but it's after the entry burn of Falcon 9. And so what that means is that you don't need the re-entry burn on Super Heavy, whereas on the Falcon 9 you do, because you're going a lot faster, right? So after you already have slowed down, then you are about the same speed as Super Heavy does. It is true, however, that Falcon 9 is smaller, so it means that after their re-entry, you can see they are about 4,300 kilometers per hour. And if you compare that to Super Heavy, it's very similar in that speed. When you've got a smaller vehicle that it's also lighter and everything, and it doesn't have as much propellant on board, and because of the shape, the re-entry forces and everything, it slows down quite a lot more. So by the time it starts its landing burn, Falcon 9 is going a lot slower than Super Heavy when it starts its own landing burn, which is also why the landing burn of Super Heavy is so aggressive, because it needs to slow down quite a lot. But thankfully, Falcon 9 doesn't need that kind of aggressive one.
And you saw the SpaceX feed stall there for a little bit. When we came back, you saw a little bit of that entry burn. They used 3 of the Merlin engines for that entry burn, but they only use 1 for the landing burn, which is coming up here in just a little bit. And you'll start to see those grid fins work and aim booster 1078 toward the drone ship as it gets closer to the water.
Yep.
On the right-hand side of your screen, you can obviously see the second stage is still powering its way uphill, and it's going to take those satellites to
Stage 1
a low Earth orbit.
There's
and there goes the
ship.
landing burn, and you can see the drone ship, right there. And
Really
the legs
low
will pop
clouds
out.
there.
Those grid fins doing their work.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
There's the booster on the drone ship view.
And we have touchdown.
Stage
And
1
that's
confirmed.
And that looks like a good landing. And the interesting thing is we've seen this so many times that over time it just looks like it's easy. And we have to remember that if you go back, right, go back and watch the attempts of the Falcon 1s and them trying to do even Hopper, the very first vehicle that they were testing. And there's your MVAC shutdown. And of course, they're going to cut their feed. And we'll say goodbye to these Starlink satellites and the second stage as we come back to Slick 40. and go back and watch some of those landings and the times that they missed. I about twice a year I'll go back and watch that SpaceX video of how to land a rocket, because it just reminds me that what they're doing is so complex and we kind of take it for granted. And that's why it's an amazing time to be alive with the Starship program, watching the testing they do. And what, yes, sometimes there are things that go wrong, but then they iterate and they redesign. And we're coming up on, test flight 8 here pretty soon, probably in the next 2 months. Probably less than that, depending upon the investigations and so on. So just remember, this is complex stuff they're doing that they make look easy now. So we have a successful launch of Booster 1078. It has been uphill and landed. It's 17th time on a shortfall of gravitas. We're working on some slow motion replays for you here in just a minute, but I want to thank Kanan. Thank you, NSF, for the amazing streams and hard work. NSF community has been so amazing. I agree with you. You're correct. I am 100% amazed that we get to do this with you guys almost every day now. And I'm amazed at some of the talent of the folks at NSF. And you guys, if you've seen a stream I've done, you've heard me say it before. It's a thrill to be here and be part of this team. Like you, I watched this content for years and years and years. I thought I knew a lot about it, and then I met the amazing people at NSF, and I got to read some of their articles over on NASAspaceflight.com. And I joined L2 with a lifetime subscription. You can see it up there in the right-hand side of your screen. And if you want to read about articles from some amazingly talented people, man, NSF is the place to be at NASAspaceflight.com with your L2 membership. It's pretty incredible. I go there probably a couple times a week, and I'm now talking to these guys in the background, so I'm learning a lot every time we do this. And all the folks in the field with the amazing tracking cameras and the stuff they do, it's incredible. Boost Noosel, $10 super chat. Thank you very much for that. Once the first stage lands on the ship, what happens after that? That's a great question, Alex. Is there a crew that secures it? How long does it take to transit back to shore? What happens to that booster when it hits the drone ship?
Well, hopefully not hit it, but landing on it.
You know what I mean.
So they have a robot on board that is called the Octograbber. Not Octo, but Octa, because it's coming from OctaWeb. And it is the Octograbber because it literally grabs onto the OctaWeb. So it has the same connections that they have for the hold-down arms on the launch mount. And so that's how it grabs onto it. And the Octograbber essentially just lowers the center of gravity essentially of the booster and secures it more tightly to the drone ship. That's one of the things that they do. Of course, another thing that they have to do is rig the drone ship to the tug, which I think for this one they used DOG itself. So the fairing recovery vessel was also the tug used for this mission, which is interesting. It's not the first time, but it's interesting because they don't often do that. Usually they use these days Signet Warhorse the third or Signet Warhorse the first. And so for this one, they used DOG itself. They're gonna rig that with a chain and everything, and then they'll put it, they'll tug the drone ship out back to Port Canaveral. Usually takes about 2-3 days. With DOG, it's probably gonna take 3 days if I were to guess. With the Signet Warhorse boats, it usually takes 2 days. But DOG, it's a little bit slower because it's not as much of a faster boat. It's fast on its own, but when it's tugging the drone ship, it doesn't have as much power. Okay, Jerry, I see your comment in chat. Yes, Warhorse the second, that vessel also has had some stuff done. But if I'm not mistaken, it's mainly the third and the first, right? So, yeah. The second, if I'm not mistaken, it's a throwback. It was one of the tugs that moved around, I think, one of the oil rigs from SpaceX. So that's a bit of a throwback, I guess. But if I'm not mistaken, it was one of those.
Dave, I agree with you in chat. NSF is the best. I mean, it's not being self-serving at all, I don't think. I don't know that Max or D would disagree with me. I mean, NSF is the best. Let's see. Shadow PL. Hey, that's a good question about Falcon 9 since we just saw one launch. Shadow 200 PL wants to know: is there going to be a Block 6? Do you think they'll do a Block 6 Falcon 9?
Really unlikely. Very unlikely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth
Yeah.
noting that they've already had a few iterations of the Block 5 in terms of fine-tuning the engines, in terms of the Merlins themselves individually, and they've been testing different flight profiles with Falcon 9 in terms of what it can carry and what flight paths it can take with varying payload masses, but nothing substantially enough, I guess, to warrant calling it a brand new block, because that entails a lot of other changes to, I guess, the overall structure of Falcon 9 and other things. So, and also it's worth noting that the Block 5 was meant to be the final iteration of Falcon 9, and also the Block 5 had to fly for a certain amount of time for it to be certified to fly a crew under NASA specifications, which, of course, as we know, they have done it several times now. So, Block 6, as Alex said, is unlikely.
There you can see Signet Warhorse the First, one of the tugs that SpaceX uses.
A cool name.
And
I like that name.
someone asked in chat, why do they use tugs? Well, one of the reasons, first and foremost, at least at port, is because they need a tug to get out of port. Even the big cruise ships, as you can see there, use tugs and everything, and pilot boats and whatever. Like, you cannot really just say, oh, I'm gonna set sail on my own. No. It's a port. You gotta need to follow the rules, and that's one of their rules. Outside of the port, though, they still use Signet Warhorse and even Dog because it's faster than even using the drone ship's own thrusters. They have never, to our knowledge at least, they have never used the drone ship's own thrusters to sail all the way out there to the landing zone. And that was one of the original goals, but those thrusters are not powerful enough to really move the drone ship as fast as they need. And so the tugs are really, really the ones that you want to use. Because this one, Signet Warhorse, the first and the third, I've seen on marine traffic at least some of these tracking going with a booster on top of the drone ship at like 11 knots or 12 knots. And that's bonkers because you're back at Port Canaveral within 2 days from the landing site here to port. So yeah, you want that kind of power. If you want to turn around that thing quickly, you really want to get back quickly.
So we are working on some slow-mos of the launch, replays of the launch, and we're going to get to those in just a second. Inspiration 101 wants to know, why did SpaceX prioritize Boca Chica site, not the one at Cape Canaveral? I mean, normal Mo. That's pretty funny. Alex, they started to build the tower. Was it Boca Chica first, or was it
Boca Chica
Florida
first?
At
Boca
least
Chica in terms of towers. In terms of Starship hardware, launch hardware, that was Path 39A.
Was that the big tank, right? They started to do the big tank?
No. They started doing a ramp for a launch diverter for the launch mount. It was a big ramp, sort of like skateboard kind of thing. That was very early 2019 while they were still building Starhopper at Starbase, excuse me. And that was turned down. It was not on the right location. It was not the right design. They move on from that.
And then we saw them take a pause. They took a huge pause in Florida as well. They were focusing on Boca Chica for obvious reasons because they wanted to start those test flights. And now we're coming up on Flight 8. Based on what happened with Flight 7, we should see a replay, right, of Flight 7 with the vehicles for Flight 8. At least we think so.
Yeah. You can see more about that on the next Starbase update.
Yeah. Well, Starbase update that you're working on right now.
Yeah.
And also Starbase Live. And, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Space Coast Live and then also McGregor Live. And somebody had mentioned earlier about, I think it was Jay, was talking about the Electron launch. Is there an Electron launch today?
Yep, it's in propellant load right now.
In propellant load? I don't know that we're going to be covering that one. I know Jay said something about it earlier, but When are you coming to Starbase? Let me ask you that.
Me?
Yeah, you.
I don't know. I'm too useful being in the studio, I guess, writing scripts and being on commentary for launch.
Being in the back channel so everybody can watch you write scripts.
Yeah.
Max and D, are you guys still on comms? When are you guys coming the next time? Flight 8?
Well, assuming there isn't anything large obstructing our schedules, Flight 8 would definitely be in the cards for me. I don't want to speak for D. I think D can speak for himself, but yes, the goal is to be there for Flight 8, and there was real FOMO for Flight 7, even though New Glenn had just happened literally hours before. So fingers crossed that Flight 8 happens sooner rather than later, and with clear scheduling.
D's typing away on a camera computer or something.
My head is still under a sweatshirt here at the press site. With this replay, this is my first time being able to use the telescope on a tracker, so I'm quite excited for that.
Yeah, should look good. I'm looking forward to it. When Flight 8 happens, I'll, if as they say, if the creeks don't rise, we got to get out there. We got to get Sawyer out there. We need the whole crew. EJ and I had a whole lot of fun on Flight 7. I'm looking forward to Flight 8. Hopefully, he can make it down for Flight 8 again. And it's a lot of fun being out there with the rockets and stuff. And on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see, is this a normal Mo?
I guess you could say that, yeah. This is from Fleet Cam, yes, sir.
Yeah. Up she goes. Fleet Cam 2. Thanks, Gage.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how much more difficult it is to see during the daytime at this distance compared to night.
And then this is from the press site.
Yep, this is from one of our bot cams attached to the side of the hut. Lovely.
That is a nice shot. Beautiful day for a rocket launch.
I was just going to say that. You really cannot ask for any better conditions than this. So, minus the wind here, of course. That was a bit of a nuisance, especially at the larger focal length. But yeah, otherwise, gorgeous conditions and a much needed change of pace compared to how much fog we've had in recent days and the last couple of launches we had before this. So, and this is another one of our bot cameras. I don't think this is auto track. Yeah, stationary. Also attached to the top of the hut.
It's amazing to see these different shots. When we just saw it go live, fun tracking camera there. These never get old. Like I could sit and watch these over and over and over and over. And by the way, for those of you still here, if you want to have some fun, take some of these and flip them sideways, like rotate them like 90 degrees to the right and make the rocket go sideways across your screen. I don't know why, but it's so much fun, especially with like a Falcon Heavy. It's so crazy to see the thing go sideways. That's a really
I've never heard of that
shot.
one before.
Oh, you got to try it. It's a ton of fun. I don't know why. The first time I did it was, a couple of years ago, but I was a Falcon Heavy launch. And I was like, hey, I'm going to turn this thing sideways. So I put it into a video editor on a computer and just flipped it 90 degrees to the right. And I said, I made it my desktop for a while because there's this giant Falcon Heavy. Instead of going up, it's going right. It's actually kind of cool.
This looks like one of the Cape cams.
Bird cam.
Yeah, bird
Lots
cam.
of bird
Of course.
cam. Bird cam.
Talk about timing. This is Gage's track, so of course it had to be the birds at first.
And that one looks like it's going sideways, but we know that's going up and tracking downrange.
Correct, and that is what you get with a more southern viewing point for these southeast trajectories.
Beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous camera work on a crystal clear sky.
Doesn't get much clearer than this, honestly.
It's really nice. Here's the behind the scenes camera. This is D underneath the hood. And there goes the rocket. Watch the tracking camera in the front there.
It'll move very slowly at first, but obviously once it climbs higher in the sky, it'll be a lot easier to see motion. But yeah, D obviously has a towel over himself because especially on a very bright day like today, it can be quite difficult to maintain a clear visual, even on a monitor. Oh wow, is this from the
Look at
telescope?
that. Oh, I can't even. SpaceX, eat your heart out. Wow.
Wowzers.
What a track. Okay, for those of you who don't know, they're saying keep talking in the background, but we're all speechless. That was so good.
This is my
yours,
track
right,
over
Max?
from Cars Park, yes sir.
Yeah.
Usually
Away she
letting it fly out
goes.
of frame before catching it again. One of the things that I was trying different this time was having a double mount camera set up on this big steel plate that DOS made for us, and it gets very heavy, especially once the cameras are tilted a lot higher. It makes it more difficult to track smoother. So that was one of the things I was struggling with on the way up. So I guess next time it's just a lesson in terms of weight management and where to put your CEG to make tracking upwards a lot easier. But I guess it was a learning experience. But having this this side profile is quite wonderful, I have to say, especially at these longer focal lengths, because it's not something you always see from the press site.
That's a great shot, Max. And you said this was mounted on a metal plate?
Correct. Yeah, it was. So I have two cameras mounted on a plate that DOS has milled from. I think it's actually aluminum that DOS has like drilled and CNC'd with a bunch of holes to mount multiple cameras and multiple things to. So this is my first time using a double mount camera setup on a hand tracking fluid head. On a tripod. So, and as I was saying earlier, this is where the weight started to become an issue, where it got pretty heavy and became a bit more difficult to track smoothly. But you can also see here how much longer the exhaust plume from all 9 Merlins has become, and also the way it's expanding as it ascends into the upper parts of the atmosphere with lower ambient pressure around it. So, this is exactly what we were talking about earlier.
That's crazy cool. All I heard was that you needed to do more military presses.
Yeah, I probably should do that as well. I'm not gonna lie.
We should all be doing that. Great work. That's awesome. And you follow this thing all the way up to, I guess, stage separation, right?
I think I lost it just before stage set because the sun is just so bright, and because the contrast really isn't there. The screen just looked blue, so it became difficult to track as the exhaust became more translucent. So I think I lost it. Oh, there we go.
Yep. I shut down.
Eat my own words.
There was stage set. That's awesome. Well, you guys in the field are just doing amazing work with the cameras, and all of us nerds love to watch the rocket launches over and over and over. Like Boo Snoozle, who's sent $10 super chat. We're going to end on this one. Thanks to the entire crew for keeping space and science history interesting and accessible to the masses. Love to watch. So do we. So do we. So thank you to everybody who made this possible. I want to thank Alex for all the great commentary. We couldn't do it without you, my friend.
As always.
And D underneath the hoodie in the field with a great tracking shot.
It's always a good time.
Max at Cars Park, amazing work, my friend. Thank you.
A pleasure as always, everybody, and thank you very much for coming to hang out with us today. And we will hopefully see you again for the next one.
And then, of course, the one and only Carson Phillips, hidden behind all the buttons and TV screens and overlays and making all of it work in the background. Carson, thank you guys so much. Don't forget, guys, hit up all of our socials on Instagram, Facebook, and on X. You'll find NSF everywhere. Check out shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Pick up some merch and keep supporting what NSF does to bring you all these amazing launches and great content. For everybody at NSF, I'm Gene Rowley. Remember, dream big, everybody, and keep your eyes on the stars. We'll catch you on the next one.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, Atlantic.
Water powered fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside SPD off. Bring in SPD off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Look at this! Put that in the big bag, Jingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. Keep red. Sure. We don't need any more of these.